This is the story of American freedom. This is the story of American freedom. It is the story of how the freedom of the United States was born with the Declaration of Independence that makes it still the only nation in history founded upon moral principles, proclaiming to the entire world that all men are created equal and endowed by their Creator with the unalienable rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. It is the story of how that freedom was won on the field of battle, the story of how it was ensured by a Constitution that still gives us freedom today, more than 200 years later. It is the story of how that American freedom spread across a continent, of how that freedom was refounded during a great civil war, and how the United States went on to be the bastion of freedom for the entire world. It is a story that is rooted in the fundamental belief that historical thought is crucial to the survival of a democracy. We will start with that galaxy of statesmen that we call the founders. Imagine what they achieved. They declared their independence from the greatest superpower of the day. They won it on the field of battle. They crafted a constitution that was ratified by their fellow citizens and still gives us freedom today. They then went on to prove to the doubting heads of Europe that democracy could work and that people, we the people, could govern ourselves. Now, when that Constitution was crafted, the United States consisted of 13 republics straggling along the eastern seaboard. It was a time in which Benjamin Franklin or George Washington traveled in the same way and communicated in the same way as Julius Caesar did. They rode, they walked, they wrote out a message and sent it by messenger. Today, that Constitution still works in an age of technology that would have astounded even Benjamin Franklin in all his wisdom. There are those of you out there, no doubt, multitasking while I talk, texting, perhaps texting a friend in Australia and getting back an immediate message. George Washington got no better care medically than did a Roman gladiator in the 1st century AD. Why, if I should fall down here of a heart attack, doctors could be rushed in, I could literally be brought back from the dead. Why? Why were the founders capable of such an enduring achievement? It is because they thought historically. Historical knowledge, that's good for nothing but trivial pursuit. That's what you look up on the internet. No, historical thought is using the lessons of the past to make decisions in the present and to plan for the future. Historical thought is using the knowledge of the past to make decisions in the present and to plan for the future. The founders learned from history. They learned from the English experience of liberty. They learned from ancient Greece and Rome and the republics and democracies that had flourished there. We live in an ahistorical age. We live in an age in which certainly lots of histories are published. Great blockbuster biographies of presidents, 800 pages long, even have a history channel on television. But we do not think historically. In fact, we believe that we are above the lessons of history, that all of our science and technology has made us immune to the laws of history. And I tell you that much of our economic problem, our foreign policy disasters, are due to this arrogant ignoral of the lessons of history. It is the purpose of this course to use the story of American freedom to bring us back to thinking historically. And it is also the purpose of this course to reflect upon the lessons of American freedom for the critical situation in which the United States finds itself today. To learn from history and to make that history speak to us today. So to begin this story of American freedom, I want you to go back with me to an April morning, about 2 o'clock in the morning, April the 19th, 1775. And you are not you were a British soldier. One of the crack units, elite troops that King George III has stationed in the city of Boston in the royal colony of Massachusetts. You're highly trained. You have proven against the French in the war that ended in 1763 that you are the best army in the world. Resplendent in your red coats and white pants, armed with your musket and bayonet, you are about to embark upon an entirely legal mission. The governor of Massachusetts, Sir Thomas Gage, is under the strongest possible pressure from London to put down the civil unrest that is rocking his North American colonies. Now you, Thomas Gage, you like Americans. You're even married to an American. But you must follow these orders. And so you have sent out this group of redcoats, of which you, a private, are a member. Now you're not in a very good frame of mind. You have been waiting around for about 3 hours, and you haven't had sleep for more than 24 hours. And your feet are wet. You've been forced to march across a little creek. Your officers, of course, ride on their horses, but your shoes have gotten wet, your silk stockings have gotten wet, and you know that if you're on this long march, they're going to rub blisters. And then you find out you've been waiting around just to get some rations, when you already had rations. But finally you start off under the command of your rather portly, elderly commander, Sir Francis Smith. Second in command, a capable soldier John Pitcairn of the Marines. But as you march along, you're uneasy. Your mission is to collect cannons. And Thomas Gage has very definite information that these colonists, you must remember that these colonists are Englishmen. They are the subjects of the king. That they have been collecting cannons. Now, these are weapons of mass destruction. They have no purpose other than to kill the king's men, like you. You don't go hunting for ducks with a cannon. So these cannons are illegal, and they must be confiscated. But as you march along, you thought all of these farmers on your way to Concord via the little town of Lexington, about 20 miles from Boston, you thought these farmers would all be asleep. But there are lights on in their windows and a lot of bustling activity going on. Governor Gage has spies inside his own cabinet. And a committee of public safety under men like Sam Adams and Paul Revere have learned that your expedition is underway, that Governor Gage is going to seize cannons either in the town of Worcester or in the town of Concord. Now, if you, the British, are going to march to Worcester, you'll go by a land route. If you're going to go to Concord, you must be rowed across the bay. Hence the message to the patriots: one if by land, two if by sea. And so there are two lanterns hanging in the old North Church tower. You march along your way. It's getting more and more towards daybreak. Up and down the roads, patriots like Paul Revere are riding, pounding on the doors of patriots. The redcoats are coming. And from these sturdy towns begin to arise militiamen, minutemen, well armed, many of them with rifles that can shoot much further than a British musket, trained in British tactics during the French and Indian War, well drilled, fearless. Finally, as daybreak comes, you British troops have arrived in the town of Lexington. And there, blocking your way, are 77 of these minutemen. Your officer rides up to them and says, "Lay down your arms, you damned rebels, and disperse." Your commanding officer speaks gently but firmly. Don't fire unless fired upon. But if the British want a war, then let it start right here. Then no one would ever know. But a shot was fired. The American troops took the volley. Some 9 of them were killed. One of them was shot and staggered back home to be bayoneted to death before the horrified eyes of his wife and children. Uh-oh, the two commanding officers said, Pitcairn and Smith, "This is bad business. We've just shot down some of the king's subjects." "Yes, but they were preparing to fire upon us." "I know. But we have got to find cannons in Concord to justify shedding this blood." And so the British march on until they come to the town of Concord. Not a whole lot is going on in the little farm town. The officers climb a hill to reconnoiter. The regular British troops are sent scouring around looking for cannons. In their reconnoitering, the officers see that there is a bridge over a river flowing down alongside the town, so they detach 98 troops to guard that bridge. Very cautious action. But where are the cannons? Time and time again, the troops report back, there are no cannons. No, there are none in that barn. There are none to be found. There have got to be cannons. No, I'm sorry, sir, but there are no cannons. Well, those wagons over there, they must have been used to carry cannons. Excuse me, sir, but those are just farm wagons. Confiscate them anyway. Well, you're one of the 98 that's been detached to the old North Bridge. And there, nothing going on, getting warmer. Your officers give you the order to take a nap. You're grateful for it. You lie down, you fall into a deep sleep, and then, as it gets towards noon, you hear a noise like a swarming of bees. Get up, you look out, and there are hundreds of American militiamen in their varied uniforms, their guns carried easily, their rifles, wearing tomahawks at their belt. They are Minutemen from the nearby towns like Sudbury and Acton. They have come at this minute's notice. They march right down that hill. Your officers form you up into a formation that is able to deal with such a group, but before you're all in line, the Americans just let loose with that deadly volley of fire from those rifles, killing you at 200 yards, giving you no chance to fire your muskets or move in with the dreaded bayonet. And the British break and run. One of them is wounded and falls across the bridge, hanging on there by the rails. And an American stops and scalps him with his tomahawk. Two more die alongside him. And this routed British unit rushes back into the town. Your officers are stupefied. It can't be. Where are all these troops coming from? They're trained militiamen. Well, maybe having drawn some blood, they'll go back. When they see what a large force we have, they do not go back. They start firing directly into the British troops, and there is nothing for it but for the commanding officer Smith and Major Pitcairn to give the order, retreat. And back the British go towards Lexington and then Concord. But the Americans do not stop now. They continue to fire volley after volley after volley from stone walls, driving the British soldiers almost to madness. British soldiers leaping those walls to get at the Americans, burning down American farmhouses. But still, the slaughter goes on. They are about to surrender when, as they approach Lexington, they hear the comforting sound, and see their comrades drawn up in order. Governor Gage has started to worry that he sent out too small a force, and so he sent out reinforcements and 2 cannons. That ought to stop these bloody colonials, but it doesn't. They follow this larger British force all the way to Boston. And the British limp into town, suffering extremely heavy casualties. It has been a complete disaster. Well, what amazes me is that if a group of Americans today got in such a situation, having shot upon their own army, they would immediately appear at the courthouse with lawyers to do a plea bargain. Not these sturdy men of New England. Instead, they gathered an army of 16,000 men from New England under the leadership of General Israel Putnam. Now, I want you to remember something, because you buy your groceries at the Walmart. April, that's planting time. These men are mostly farmers. If they don't get that crop in, their family doesn't eat. But they are willing to risk that for freedom. And thus, in a manner that would have impressed a European officer, the American forces throw up siege works all around the town of Boston. And except by sea, where the British ships dominate, the British forces inside Boston are besieged and in serious trouble. By June, new generals have arrived, like General William Howe. He immediately surveys the situation. If the British can get cannons up upon the heights there at Boston, they can fire down upon and wreck the American siege lines. But General Putnam has already had that idea. And on June the 16th, some 1,200 Americans in the evening silently make their way up to the heights, Breed's Hill, Bunker Hill, under William Prescott. And when the sun comes up on the 17th of June, still 1775, Governor Gage looks out, and the hills are dominated by a superb set of fortification. He turns to one of his advisors, a loyalist, an American, and says, "That soldier up there on the ramparts, that officer, do you know him?" Taking the spyglass, "Oh yes, that's my brother-in-law, William Prescott." "Will he fight?" "He's an old soldier and he'll fight you like the devil." "We cannot allow this to go on. I am ordering a direct frontal assault upon that fortification." "Please," the generals plead, "let us use our fleet." "No, we must show these rebels that they cannot stand up to the British army." And thus, 2,200 crack British troops are landed on the shore not far from Breed's Hill and Bunker Hill. They start up in their 3 rows, as they always go, 80 steps per minute, wearing their heavy red jackets, their woolen pants, their woolen underwear, carrying full field pack. And as they approach, they notice that the Americans have driven little white stakes at regular intervals, 80 yards, 70 yards, 60 yards, marking off when a British musket might be able to begin to fire. "Hold steady, boys," says Prescott. "Don't fire till you see the whites of their eyes. Now, fire!" And it is a blistering volley that sends the British tumbling down the hill. Using good strategy, good tactics, another group of British troops have been detached to outflank the Americans. They think they're carrying out this maneuver unseen. But as they reach the American fortifications, suddenly they find out the Americans have a hidden fortification there in their path. And sharpshooters from New Hampshire leap up and give them a withering, devastating, deadly blast of fire. So the whole British force tumbles down the hill. Send them back up! Send them back up! We're losing so many officers as well as men. Our orders are to take it by frontal assault. And so the brave British go up again, only to be driven back down with heavy casualties. Where are those cannons I ordered? Says General Howe in overall command. Well, we got the cannons, General, but we got the wrong size cannonballs. Oh. Tell them to go up again. Sir, the men are willing to go up again, but they ask, can they please get these damned woolen coats off? Can they strip down to their underwear? Can they strip off their field rations? Can they go up in small groups, not marching in rank upon rank? Tell them to do it. And so off they go. But by this time, the Americans are running out of ammunition. Some of them have only one round left. Among these is Dr. Joseph Warren, the most distinguished physician in America. He made a fortune because he had the courage to use the newly discovered smallpox vaccine when no other doctor in Boston dared use it. He's a member of the Committee of Public Safety. He might have been an officer commanding. He is chosen to fight as a private in the ranks. And so the British come, and it's clubbing the British using their bayonets. William Prescott's coat still preserved with the many British bayonet thrusts through it. Dr. Warren dies there on the field of honor. And in good order, the Americans retreat. 1 out of every 2 British soldiers, including many officers, has been killed or wounded. The siege continues. And the Congress of these American colonies meeting in Philadelphia understands that this is a war. They must form a regular army drawn from all the colonies and appoint a commander-in-chief. And so it would be on July the 1st, 1775, that General George Washington from Virginia, who has known that this war must come, appears in Cambridge, Massachusetts, resplendent in his blue uniform, riding his magnificent stallion with dignity. Every man's eyes attracted by his strength of character, his firmness of will. Washington there under an elm in Cambridge takes command of this army of the colonies. And thus the war with Britain has become a reality. Will it be just a revolt of rebels? Or will it see the proclamation of a new nation?
The Story of Freedom in America with Dr. J. Rufus Fears is made possible by the generous support of our freedom and heritage sponsors. The Story of Freedom in America is a program of the Institute for the American Constitutional Heritage at the University of Oklahoma. in partnership with the Alumni Association of the University of Oklahoma. For more videos and podcasts, visit freedom.ou.edu.